A big step of what it means to thrive in 2030 is harnessing this human competitive advantage. A big aspect of our future is working with and collaborating with technology. So before we dive in, I'll tell you a little bit about myself. My name is Victoria. I'm currently based in Salt Lake City, Utah, but I have lived, traveled, worked, and studied in 70 countries around the world. My educational background is I received my bachelor's in political science and Asian studies, my first master's in international business, my second master's in business analytics, and in 2018, I founded the Business and Current Affairs think tank in Dubai, and recently I accepted a position with Amazon Logistics. If any of you have any questions about my background or my experience, feel free to reach out to me after this and we can continue the conversation. But let's dive in. So I know on here, this graph is a little blurry, so I'm gonna try to present to you the PDF. My point of showing this to all of you is not so you'll read it all, but so you'll see that there are a lot of different technologies that are being brought to market. All of these on the left side are new areas that are coming up. So for example, we have data uploading to the brain, number 79. So if we go over here to the right, we can see the companies that are working on this right now. So we have Kernel, Neuralink, 2045 initiative in Russia, DARPA, GE, and possibly Facebook. So there is a lot happening, and as technology continues to change at an exponential pace, we have to know as humans how we can keep up with collaborating with our new technology partners. And that's kind of where the human competitive advantage comes in. So Matthew talked about some of the skills that are on the incline and that are in high demand. And there are a lot of skills that humans are particularly good at and that differentiate us from robotics or from artificial intelligence. And I had to narrow it down to 3 because of time constraints, but I encourage all of you to continue to do some research on your own. The 3 skills I was focusing on today is emotional intelligence, future thinking, and design thinking. So emotional intelligence ties back into how can we relate to one another and make sure that we're working the best way we can with other humans? How can we be cohesive and collaborative? Future thinking, we're being analytical about what the future might look like and understanding what steps can we take to control how we might fit into the future. And then finally, with design thinking, this ties into creativity and how can we continue to design products and services that are necessary for us as we continue evolving. So first, talking about emotional intelligence, there are 4 different aspects to emotional intelligence: self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, and relationship management. So by strengthening ourselves in these 4 areas, we can increase our emotional intelligence. So to dive a little bit deeper into what this looks like, self-awareness is understanding who am I, what makes me tick, and a couple strategies for you to increase your self-awareness. One is seeking feedback. Other people might see different parts of who you are, but you might be blind to or biased to. So seeking feedback from close friends or professors will give you a better understanding of who you are and your own self-awareness. Also getting to know yourself under stress. When we're in stressful situations, we tend to be less proactive and more reactive. We don't think as intentionally about how we want to respond to situations. So understand what are your red flags, what makes you stressed out, and how can you take steps to mitigate that stress so that you can still be calm and collected in certain situations. Self-management, using our awareness of our emotions to choose what we say and do. One example of this is taking control of your self-talk. Self-talk is really powerful in helping us perceive and move past certain situations. So if you're telling yourself, I'm amazing, I'm going to nail it, I'm going to do great, that can help uplift you and bring about the best and ensure that you're taking the right actions to continue to improve your emotional intelligence. The third aspect is social awareness, recognizing the moods of others. This can be really important when working with others and also in the technological sphere. You know, if you are working in tandem with robotics or again, some of those other disruptive technologies I showed you in the chart, you want to be able to understand the dynamics of your team quickly and efficiently. One way you can do this is testing for accuracy. You know, maybe you don't always interpret people's body language or communication accurately. It's okay to ask, you know, like, hey, Jonathan, I noticed you're a little down today. Is everything okay? Maybe Jonathan's just tired and he's like, you know, I was just tired. Don't worry about it. Or maybe he's not okay and he really appreciates that you reached out to him. And that will help you fine tune your social awareness of, okay, these signals indicate my team is feeling this way or that way. The fourth and final aspect is relationship management. So building those relationships that have staying power and grow over time. This is extremely important. I'm sure you've all heard it's not what you know, but who you know. Although I think it's 50-50 what you know and who you know, I cannot deny the fact that your network and that your relationships are extremely powerful, especially as we move forward with this exponential rate of change of technology. So really investing in people. And like the video showed earlier, you know, people want to feel happy at work. They want to be able to experience things and not just go to do a job. So you can help make that possible and prove your value by being able to create these relationships. One strategy to strengthen your relationship management is aligning your intention with impact. Sometimes we do something thinking it'll have a certain impact, but later realize that wasn't the impact that we wanted. And sometimes outside observers can help you understand, okay, what is the context of my intention, and am I going to get the result that I wanted? The second skill I wanted to talk about is future thinking. So again, this is making predictions about what the future is going to look like and understanding what actions can we take to get the best future outcome that we want. And there are two techniques for this strategy: horizon scanning and scenario planning. So before we talk about the two techniques, I want to show you this graph about shaping the future. This is from the Foresight Manual from UNDP. Here you can see on the left side, it points out this is where we are now. And then we can see all the possible future outcomes. So there's no one future. There are multiple different types of future. And it's very hard to predict the future, but we can look at certain factors to help us understand what can we do to shape the future. So as you can see, here's this yellow dotted line showing us the baseline. If everything remains the same and business as usual continues, then we'll most likely end up on this trajectory right here, the projected future. Then you can see the probable future, what is most likely to happen. We can see the bigger circle, the plausible future, it could happen. The possible future, as you can see, it gets bigger, preposterous future. And then here we see the green preferable future. This is what we want to happen or what should happen. And there's some overlap, as you can see, between these different future outcomes. But I just want you to have this visual so you can see, all right, this is what we're hearing about of what the future of work is going to look like. And these are the emerging technologies people are using now. But there are a lot of different ways the future can go. So let's dive a little bit deeper into what you can do to help you think critically about the future. So in terms of grasping the future, we can look at different signals, and this is what's happening around us. These are individual events and data points, and we usually get this information from the news or the media. Okay, this is happening. You can look at US-China relations. You can look at the coronavirus. You can, again, look at the disruptive technologies that are on the market and see, okay, these are the different events that are happening. But then after we look at the events, we want to look at the trends of, okay, the coronavirus pandemic might be increasing in certain areas of the world and decreasing in other areas of the world. These are different types of trends that we can view over time and connect to one another. And then when we look at the drivers, this is why those trends are happening. They're mature trends that have a big impact across a wide range of sectors and industries. And we always have to leave room for uncertainties. These are emerging issues that have no known evolution or direction. Sometimes people will call this a black swan or a wild card. These are things that are very difficult for us to predict and very difficult for us to find signals of as we continue living throughout the present. So finding signals. Horizon scanning is the first strategy that I mentioned earlier. This is the process of looking for early warning signs and the pace of change. So when we are keeping up with the news and the media, we can start, again, collecting those data points of signals of what is happening in the world around us. So to be effective at horizon scanning, you're first going to want to select a topic. So referring back to that disruptive technologies chart, you can select one of those areas and decide that's going to be your focus. And then every week, you want to make sure you're intentionally looking for at least one article relating to that technology. You want it to be a recent article, usually news or media, but sometimes there are other sources you can find as well. And just write a couple sentences and compile your notes. Now, this activity is most effective when you're in a group of about 10 people, because then you're all looking at different sources and compiling information about one area, be it virtual reality, artificial intelligence, or something of that matter. This is a graph of what scenario planning looks like. This is a 2x2 matrix. And what you do when you do something like scenario planning for the future is you pick 2 dimensions of uncertainty. Now remember, we talked about signals, trends, drivers, and then the last category was uncertainties. So this is something that is very difficult for us to predict. For example, a scenario planning matrix that we could do for the 2 dimensions of uncertainty, we could select something like climate change and then something like population growth. We're not exactly sure how those 2 aspects are going to play out over time. So let's say on the A axis, we put climate change. On the B axis, we put population growth. Then for scenario 2, we could say, okay, it would be our global temperature does increase by 2 degrees Celsius, and our population grows at a rapid pace. So for scenario 2, we would try to flesh that scenario out as much as possible in as much detail. We want to make sure all 4 scenarios are not correlated. They're all relatively plausible. They could happen, and they're relatively preferable. So we don't want to have a good scenario and a bad scenario. We just want to understand in 2030, if we were to have 2 degrees Celsius and high population growth, what would that scenario look like? And to assist in fleshing out those scenarios, we can use something called the STEEP and PESTLE methods. And STEEP just stands for social, technological, economic, environmental, and political aspects. So it will just help you think of each of those aspects of what will that future scenario look like. Now, the third skill that I want to touch on today is design thinking. And design thinking goes back to creating the products and the services that we want to have now as we continue to move forward. There are 5 steps to design thinking: empathize, define, ideate, prototype, and test. So in any industry that you're in, you can use design thinking to help improve the project that you're working on. Now with empathizing, this is understanding who will be using my product and service. And again, with empathize, we go back to our emotional intelligence that we spoke about at the beginning of this presentation. How can I connect to that target audience? What are their pain points? What are their problems? And then once you get a feel for that, you can define the problem that you're trying to solve and begin to brainstorm solutions with your team. And then create a prototype and then test the prototype and see how effective is the product or solution that you're creating. And this is something you're going to want to do over and over and over again, especially as things continue to change. The only thing we know for sure is that things will continue to change. So we should embrace change and set ourselves up for success by being flexible and adaptable in the way that we create products and services. So marrying the 3 techniques together of emotional intelligence, future thinking, and design thinking, we can see here, traditionally design thinking focuses on the present, on the now. What are the problems people are experiencing right now? How can I design a product that will fix that problem now? However, with future thinking, it tends to look more into the past. You know, we're looking at the signals, the trends, the drivers, the uncertainties, and we're trying to figure out large scale what's going to be happening in the future. So if we marry those 2 techniques together, again, looking with our emotional intelligence of relating to each other as humans, how can we create products and services that can solve problems now, but also solve the problems that we're going to be facing in 2030? And with design thinking, we can continue to iterate that process and test and change and adapt as necessary. And then looking at the macro and the micro, Again, design thinking tends to be more focused on, what's happening in my town or my city with these businesses and what technology do I have at my disposal. And that's always a good place to start. But then also, again, thinking at the macro perspective of socially, economically, politically, environmentally, what does this product or service do? And as I want to expand or continue to thrive in the future, how can I ensure that I'm thinking broadly enough and in the longer term to have a successful product or service? And then finally, focusing on that user experience. I cannot emphasize enough how important it is for us to increase our emotional intelligence in this technological age. And we want to be very in tune with the people and what the people need to be able to solve their problems. To recap the 3 skills I just mentioned, we have emotional intelligence, future thinking, and design thinking. So with that, here's my contact information. You're always welcome to email me or add me on LinkedIn. But thank you so much for having me, and I look forward to answering some of your questions.
Many thanks, Victoria, for that presentation. I think it sort of demystifies what this big title on emerging technologies and the future of work is all about. Some people think it's just hard coding and people sitting in some cubicle coming up with crazy systems and applications, but it really begins with understanding your environment and those skills like design thinking, emotional intelligence, and being able to understand how people, business, and technology intersect. So many thanks for that.